Senator Joe Griffo.
Thanks, Senator. 30 years after the miracle on ice, I think that miracle you're talking about is unlikely. It's unfortunate, though, too, that we don't have a budget. Commissioner, a couple of things. According to a non-for-profit organization called Parks and Trails New York, they estimate that the historic sites and state parks generate about $1.9 billion annually. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
So as a result of some of the recommendations for closure, isn't that going to impact that number?
Yes.
Have you looked at, I know you, and I appreciate the hard work that you've done, because you have traveled across the state and have gotten familiar with the regions and the parks and facilities. So I do appreciate the hard work that you put into your job. Have we looked at, I know you've talked about how excruciating the decisions are, and all of the options that hopefully you looked at and evaluated during this process. Something that I've been talking about is, you know, one of our primary missions, in my opinion, is that these parks and historic sites are serving our residents. We also are in other businesses that, in my opinion, compete with the private sector. Golf courses. We own a lot of golf courses. I know in Oneida County alone, we had a golf course that the state owned that they sold in the town of Marcy that sold for $1.5 million 18 years ago. Have we looked at the possibility of sale of some of the many golf courses we own? I know some may be sacrosanct, like Bethpage, or because of the uniqueness, but there are many others that, in my opinion, compete with the private sector and also could generate revenue. Granted, it would be one time as far as the sale price, but you would be ongoing with property tax revenue and sales tax revenue. I don't know that that's been given serious consideration.
Well, we have given serious consideration to concessions, which would mean that private industry would run for a period of 10, 20, 30 years, whatever is negotiated, golf courses. And in fact, many of our golf courses are in fact run by concessionaires. Saratoga Spa is a very good example of a golf course that is concessioned out, meaning that a private enterprise runs it. By the nature of what we are seeing in terms of which parks and which golf courses and which historic sites are on the lists, those are indications that those places actually don't make money and are subsidized by the state. I think, in fact, it's a proper thing that the government does subsidize some parks and historic sites, and that the revenues that are generated in some of the richer ones be used for the entire of the parks. But by their nature, those golf courses that do not have concessionaires are those that continue to be subsidized. We're not in the business of selling state land, and so we have not considered that, and I don't think that we would. But we do always consider if a town or a private person or company would like to enter into an agreement where we can have a public-private partnership for those, we are more than happy and do enter into those agreements.
Well, I would hope that we reconsider that. As I said, I gave you an example where we did sell one and generated over $1.5 million 18 years ago. So when you're talking about a $6 million issue to keep parks open, and I think that's our primary mission, we should look at every option. Another question that I would have is, you're responsible for campgrounds, the DEC is responsible for campgrounds. Have we discussed the possibility of consolidation to put all of these functions under one of the departments so that we don't have some of this duplication and both departments running a program that maybe should likely be placed under you?
In fact, over the years, I think there have been some of those discussions. We do use a common reservation system for both the DEC and the Parks Department campgrounds. You know, by law, we're not able to operate or own anything within both the Catskill Park and the Adirondack Park, which is where those campgrounds are. So from time to time, those discussions come up. They may come up again.
And last question.
We're not opposed to it.
Thank you. Last question. Do you know of, we talk about some of these communities that really want to help too. For instance, using service clubs and volunteer programs like Friends of the Park, where you could keep some of the sites that may be on the endangered list right now open. Are there any regulations or rules that would prohibit that? Or have we begun to look and work with communities to try to encourage that also?
There are no regulations that prohibit it. There are issues that we get concerned about, like insurance. Someone's got to cover insurance. But many of our friends groups are in fact active partners with us in the operation and carrying costs of our operations of both the parks and historic sites.
Thank you.